You're watching Community Conversations, a Concord TV production.
Hi there, I'm Jim Webber from ConcordTV, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Community Conversations. We have a very unusual episode today. Oftentimes we're talking to one nonprofit or one person about, a special event they have coming up or a fundraiser. But today we're actually talking about a building, and the subject becomes a little bit more complex because there are a number of people involved, a number of stakeholders. And there's also been a lot of interest in the community recently. If you read letters to the editor or letters in the Monitor, you may have seen this. There's some activity going on surrounding this building. So today we're going to be talking about the Concord Gasholder. Its formal name is actually the Concord Gas Light Company Gasholder House, but you don't have to remember all that at this point in the show. It's actually it's kind of an architectural landmark. It's a historic structure. We're going to look at the background of this building, why it was built, what its purpose was, and how it fits into Concord's history. We'll also talk about why there's community interest in it today. Is it going to stay around? Will it be preserved? Who has interest in this, and what would they like to see happen? Is there future potential for the building, and what would the possible uses be? So, and then after that, we'd kind of like to look at what is happening now. Where is this project, if indeed it is a project, progressing? And how can we help it get there? And maybe there's some action that community members can get involved in too. And we'll probably wrap up with that at the end. But first, I'd like to introduce our guests. We have some wonderful guests that give us very brilliant perspectives on this subject right at the outset. We have Liz Durfee Hengen with us. Liz Durfee Hengen is an independent historic preservation consultant based in Concord, who for the past 40 years has worked on projects throughout New England. We also have Althea Barton with us. Althea advocates for historic preservation citywide with her work from the Kimball Jenkins Estate and School. And she's a volunteer with the Pennacook Historical Society, with Abbott Downing Historical Society, and with the Concord Preservation Alliance. And not finally, but we have Tim Sink, who is the president of the Greater Concord Chamber of Commerce with us, who will be able to give us a terrific perspective on potential future options for the Gasholder building. Now, throughout the show, you're going to be seeing pictures of the Gasholder on the screen, and we'll change them from time to time, hopefully not too distracting, but to give you different looks at it in the present and also in the past as well. I grew up in the south end of Concord, and this was before the days of, mom's shuttle service with the SUV. So I remember riding my bike around the area, far and wide during the late 60s, early 70s. And I remember passing this building many, many times. For a while, it was actually kind of, I'll say that the spotlight was taken by a metal gas holder, which was behind it, and that has been taken down. Probably with good reason. The gas holder that is there, at least from my point of view, is much more attractive. So I'm not going to say too much more about that, but I want to start with Althea. If you could give us some idea of, what the Gasholder is, where it is, and how we look at it today. What is the public, what do they think when they look at this building? If you could help us out with that.
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Jim, and thank you to Concord TV for having us on and for all the great work you do for our city. It's really wonderful how you capture so much of what's going on. The Concord Gasholder, the first time I ever saw it was the first day I drove into Concord in 2020. because you can see it from the highway. You can see it from 93 as you're driving up from the south. It's really visible on the skyline. It's a big round brick building with a kind of conical roof and a cupola that's tilted. Legend has it that it got tilted in the 1938 hurricane, I think. And when you see it, you wonder what is going on with that place. Is that some kind of carousel? What could we do in there? What's happening in there? But it has not been used for a long time. It's been closed up, and it's unique. I'm sure Liz will speak to the history of it and what makes it the only one of its kind in the country and possibly in the world. But from a sort of person on the street point of view, it's just a really cool structure. I've talked with many people who grew up in the south end of Concord, who, as you said, rode their bikes there just to catch a look at it. People whose parents worked there when it was a functioning Gasholder building. There is a lot of collective memory around the place, and that makes it a really special place for Concord. It also was built in 1888. It has some beautiful brickwork. It has a very special roof made of slate from Maine. All of the elements of the building were built by our people. It has a lot of heart and soul in it, and I think that makes it special.
That's amazing, especially how the connections to the community still exist through families and people who remember and have stories. That's something that, I don't know, I really think of. It seems as though to me someone comes in and plunks it there. Liz, could you tell us when the building was built, how it actually worked, and what did it do? What was its purpose?
I'd be delighted to talk about that. It was built in 1888. And in fact, when you walk by it, just take a look above the doorway and you will see the date inscribed in a granite date plate. But it was built to hold manufactured gas that was made from coal. And by 1888, most larger towns and cities were served by gas plants because gas was a key fuel to provide lighting for city and for industrial and residential buildings. It was also used for heating and cooking. The Gasholder builders were always round, and that made them instantly recognizable and symbols of progressive communities. And Concord's was, and as Althea said, it still is a landmark on the skyline. Now, interestingly, you wouldn't know it today, but Concord's Gasholder was part of a long industrial corridor that stretched a good mile and was the city's economic backbone for more than a century. From Page belting up in the North End, where leather belting was produced, and this belting was used in factories all across the country, to the Abbott Downing Company in the South End, and not very far from the Gasholder building. At Abbott Downing, world-renowned stagecoaches were made. All of these buildings relied on gas that was held in the Gasholder. And there were multiple industries all along this corridor, as I said, dependent on gas to light and to heat their factory buildings. Concord Gas Light Company purposely put its Gasholder close by the railroad tracks as the needed coal arrived via rail. And yes, the railroad station and the enormous complex of repair shops that stood south of the Gasholder were equally reliant on the manufactured gas. When natural gas came in, it ended coal gas production. So coal gas was last produced at this site in 1953. And since then, the Gasholder house has remained empty and unused. But these buildings were once incredibly common. In fact, Concord had 3 of them. Mm-hmm. However, today, there are only 14 left in the entire nation. And Concord's is the only one of that group, the only one in the country to still have its inner workings. And I'll just add by saying, because of its extreme importance, it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And while that's a huge honor, it does not protect it from demolition.
It's amazing to me that these buildings that were seemingly created for a utilitarian purpose, as time goes by, you know, maybe it's just because they become somewhat special or unique, and Concord has the only one that has its inner workings intact. But they have a beauty to us that may have not have registered on people at the time, you know, in the sense it was a style of the architecture that they used. But looking back at it, and I think the word has already been mentioned, cool, and I've seen this come up in print a few times in relation to how we're looking at the building now. Tim, in addition to the cool factor, what future possibilities, potentialities are people looking at for this building, since we don't need the coal gas anymore? What could it be used for, or could it be used, or, you know, does it have any purpose or a number of purposes that might be useful to the community and as a center of attraction for, you know, commerce?
Yeah, sure. So before I get into that, I just, I'll mention that having been in Concord for about 35 years now, I cannot tell you the number of lamentations I've heard over the years about the loss of the railroad station and what that meant to Concord, that loss that we can never get back. So I think a lot of people are putting this in that kind of a perspective, that this is an opportunity and that we may be a little bit more awake right now in terms of what's happening and the importance of preserving this. So it's not as though we haven't been looking at options, and actually there have been a number of options that have been looked at over the years. Currently, because of the urgency, there is a mayor-appointed committee that has been taking a deep dive into this, and Althea Barton and Liz Hengen are both members of that committee as non-city councilors, as am I. So we've been working with consultants and taking a look at what could happen on that site. There are a number of different opportunities. This is a challenging project. There are environmental issues, and those environmental issues are going to be there no matter what. So, so this committee is kind of looking at what those potentials might be beyond just taking the easy way out and demolishing the building and putting a cap on the site and wiping our hands and moving away. That may be the cheapest approach, or it may not be. But we're taking a long-term look at this. This is a southern gateway to downtown. It has the potential for a monument. It has been looked at by very viable developers, people like Alex Ray from the Common Man Restaurants, Rusty McClear, former owner of Inns at Mills Falls. They've looked at it as a possible site for a restaurant, commercial site, a distillery. We've talked about the opportunity to create a park here with a monument. And Liz had mentioned that it's close proximity to incredibly significant historic structures and historic locations. I mean, the Abbott Downing is right in that same neighborhood. Also looking at the possibility, it could be residential properties and preserve the building itself. Personally, I'd love to see something happen so that we could actually get in that building and make some sort of a commercial use. That's probably the most challenging, most expensive approach to it. But there is a lot of discussion going on right now, a lot of creative thinking. I think the city council has been very open to what might happen down there. There has been an anonymous contribution to help get us moving in the financial direction, and that was really very good news to hear. And the owners, Liberty Utilities, has been at the table. They obviously have obligations to their shareholders, but they have been listening and, you know, listening to the gentle persuasiveness that we've been using to really put some resources into preserving that site. It's got some challenges in the short run in terms of making sure we get the building through the winter, because there's some issues with the roof, and those are not easy fixes. But there is tremendous potential with this site. And again, I'll just go back. If we lose this building, I think it's going to be something that you're going to hear people complaining about for a long time to come that we lost an opportunity to preserve a very historic structure.
I think that makes a great deal of sense in terms of, the future potentiality, not only of the building, but areas that surround it. And I think the one reason perhaps that this is getting a lot of, maybe you can speak to this, Tim, as well, community interest and activity is, it seems to me of late, there's been more appreciation of the historic elements, the Victorian style, the railroad era background of Concord than ever. I'm sure that could be argued by other people who did preservation work in the 20s and 30s and 40s. But it seems to me that there is just a terrific amount of energy surrounding preserving the identity of Concord and the beauty of that. I'm from Concord in this area, but I had lived in Pasadena, California, which had an old town that was of railroad era with, brick Victorian buildings that were 3-4 stories high. It had a similar look to it. And they identified their old town in the same way and made sure that they would preserve as much as possible and make it work for, the commerce as well as the identity of the community. So do you think there's renewed interest in preserving things in the community of that era?
I think there's a much heightened sensitivity to losing historic structures.
Mm-hmm.
In it over the past 10 or 15 years. There are many other examples besides the train station. But from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, Concord is rich in history. It has wonderful stories to tell, and it can be a cultural center for the state. So New Hampshire's second largest industry is tourism. We have the opportunity to really promote this community as a historic and cultural center. So maintaining that particular structure, I think, is really important to Concord's story. And we can add so much more to that, but losing that would be, it would be a real loss for the community. And it would take away an opportunity to bring people off the highway and tell Concord's story.
I think that's true. And as you mentioned, the highway, as Althea had, when you turn that bend as you're heading north on 93, of course, when I was a child, on the right, you had 20 billboards, but those are gone now. But on the left, you look up and it's almost as though there's a castle on the hill, you know what I mean? And when you look at and that's the gas house. And I noticed the other day, we were up for the Winterfest, that in the wintertime, it's even more visible, which is just great. But it draws you into the community in a way that, other towns don't have something like that. That is very identifiable. So it does have that kind of gateway sense about it. Althea, maybe you could speak to that a little bit more.
Sure, I would definitely wholeheartedly agree with what both of you are saying. If you look at our gateways, so the southern gateway to downtown is the Gasholder House. The northern gateway to downtown at exit 15 is Kimball Jenkins, and a number of other historic buildings in that area, the Concord Historic District. Also very visible as you're coming off the highway, and it really helps to define that neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And then we mentioned Abbott Downing. The Abbott Downing Historical Society is in the process of taking the city stables, which is in the west side of Concord, near the high school, and making those into a Concord Coach Museum. And then further north in Pennacook, we have the Pennacook Historical Society, which has, of course, its own heritage district. So there is so much richness in the city, as Tim said, and I hope that the publicity and the attention that the Gasholder House is getting will rub off on other properties around Concord and help us become that historic destination. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the anonymous donation that the Gasholder House has been pledged. That's a $500,000 pledge and it's a significant amount of money. You know, it's good for the economy. These kinds of projects, I'm sure Tim can speak to this better, but they create jobs, local jobs, high-paying jobs in these traditional crafts and trades of caring for the slate roof and the brick work and the other aspects of the project. So there's so much benefits to our community overall.
I think that that's completely true. And when I have been looking into this a little bit, I'm just overwhelmed by the complexity of answering the questions that this project, you know, potentially brings up. You almost have to look at the end result and work backwards and try to fit the pieces in along the way. It's not just taking one step and then another step and then another. They all have to be fit together as you move along. Liz, this is out of the blue slightly, but is there an educational aspect to preserving the Gasholder and this part of the community for the future? Maybe we can relate that to the Aberdowning Museum to a degree as well. So.
Well, there's always an educational aspect to reusing any older buildings. And I think it's important to think of education as being integral to daily life and not a thing that happens off on the fringe.
Right.
I don't know of a single successful commercial district in the United States that doesn't have a component of historic preservation to it. And they just go hand in hand to really making people understand that they belong to a place, they actually belong, and it has a quirky, unique identity, and here's what it is. And there's no better way to just build the fabric of a community than to look at the past and how to integrate it into the future.
Beautifully put, beautifully put. Now, before we wrap up, can maybe we all speak to what can viewers do if they're interested in finding more about what's happening now, what is going on with the project, what future potentialities there are, and something specific that they can maybe either contribute or do personally? Jump in.
Sure, I'd be happy to jump. Oh, I'll start by mentioning the website. There is a Save Our Gasholder website, saveourgasholder.org. And that has all sorts of good information to learn more about the project, to learn more about the building, how to stay in touch. There's a petition there to sign, to pledge or to show your support of it. There's a way to donate to cover just some of the smaller administrative costs that we've encountered along the way, lawn signs and so forth. And there's also a way to put forth ideas and suggestions you might have.
That's great. Tim, you had something?
Yeah, I think Liz covered that really well. The one other thing I would mention is that the city task force, even though they've already delivered the report to City Council and it's been accepted by City Council, the mayor wanted to extend the life of that group to continue to brainstorm and advocate. And that when that committee meets, it's open to non-members to participate. And the chair, City Councilor Byron Champlin, is very good about allowing public input once the business of the meeting has been wrapped up. So I would encourage people to keep an eye open for those meetings and feel free to jump in and participate.
Sure. So and Althea, you have anything to add on that, or in terms of what the public might be able to do as far as participation goes?
Well, those are great points, and I've been very active on the grassroots level. There's a huge amount of interest. We have 100 yard signs out, and we've had, I don't know, close to 1,000 people sign the petition. So the more the better, the more our city and Liberty Utilities know that we care about this place, the more likely that we'll have a positive outcome. I would also invite everyone to, Kimball Jenkins is having an online event on February 16th. It's about the Gasholder and our restoration project and the other historic sites around the city, to just sort of give an overview and look at some of the techniques that make these places really, really special. And call your city councilor, write a letter to the editor. The more we talk about it, the more chance we have of saving the place.
That's great. Thank you so much. I just want to thank all of you for helping us today to sort of continue awareness about this project, and also let people know, even though this program is likely to be rerun, it's a developing story, you know, so it doesn't stop in time. Please keep checking your newspaper, check online, please go to the website. As Tim said, they're inviting public participation in events at City Hall related to this, which may be available online as well. So please keep looking out, and please look into this. These beautiful buildings, especially, this is a one of a kind in the country. So, and it has an urgency, I'm hearing, to this story that has to be addressed and focused on. If we wait too long, it could be lost. We may not have an option as time goes by. So it's very important. Thank you all so much for being here. Concord TV is very grateful for your participation in community conversations. Thank you.
Jim, could I say one other thing? I'm sorry, and I know we're running out of time. But you mentioned you know, the threat. There is a threat that Liberty will demolish it. They've talked about many times, talked about pulling a demolition permit. So that threat is always on the horizon, or still on the horizon today. So yes, please do what you can.
Please do what you can, and do it now. There you go.
Now.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Althea.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.